Hello, Mr. Musk. It's an honor to meet you. So my question is this, and I ask this as a first-time voter. As we know, Trump did not and has not accepted the results of the 2020 election, one which has been called the most secure in the nation's history by the former president's own Department of Homeland Security. Similarly, I saw the violent disruption of the electoral vote count on the news during January 6th. And I ask this as a first-time voter who wants to discern the truth.
Sure.
What would you say to comfort the concerns of young voters like me who are worried that voting for a second Trump presidency will lead to Democratic backsliding?
Well, I think that's a fair question, honestly. I think it is a fair question. The thing is that I want to frame this correctly, and obviously anything I say, the legacy media is going to take a soundbite out of what I say and misconstrue what I'm saying, which is something they've done with President Trump many times. It is very important, if you've heard something bad about President Trump, listen to his whole speech. That's actually very important, you know. And on January 6th, I mean, his statements on that day, he told people to back down. I mean, he said, do not do violence. And then people were like saying, well, that's actually some sort of dog whistle about doing violence. I'm like, what are you supposed to say? You know, he did actually tell people to not be violent. He recommended that the National Guard be deployed. Nancy Pelosi said no. So he didn't call for any violence, exactly. But while it obviously, I think it was like the level of disruption was high, and I don't applaud any kind of damage to public property, of course. The media tries to characterize January 6th as some sort of violent insurrection, which is simply not the case. That is false. So, I would take, I think probably what I think is the reasonable middle ground, which is I disagree with the level of protest, but it was in no way a violent insurrection. There's got to be a lot of guns for it to be a violent insurrection. And there were a lot of strange things in terms of voting irregularities that are hard to explain. Yeah, I mean, there were things that are statistically unlikely, let me put it that way. It's not as though the January 6th protesters their protests had no merit. They had some merit. I disagree with the magnitude of what they did, but but it's not as though there were no issues. There were issues. And we have this weird situation in America where it is almost impossible to prove fraud, because if you've got no voter ID and mail-in ballots, how do you prove fraud? And it does seem more than a little odd that we don't have voter ID. And then you look at, say, states like California, which is supermajority Democrat. They passed a law banning voter ID in any election whatsoever. Now, how is that supporting democracy? That's not supporting democracy. I mean, that's insane. Almost every country on earth has voter ID requirements, but we don't. And why do the same people that demanded vaccine IDs for you to do anything are the same ones who say no ID for voting? Something doesn't add up. It doesn't add up, you know? I mean, my firm opinion is that those who say Trump is a threat to democracy are themselves the threat to democracy.